Since childhood, I've always been attached to animals, but Max, my German Shepherd, was special. I got him as a puppy, and I remember how small he was, with big, bright eyes, always so loyal and loving. He was my companion through every phase of life and never, ever, left me alone, not even for a minute. It's ironic to think about it now because back then, I found this trait endearing, almost like a demonstration of the love he felt for me. But over time, that need to always be close started to become disturbing. It all began on a seemingly ordinary night. I was in my room, getting ready to sleep, and Max was lying silently at the foot of the bed. Suddenly, he started growling. It wasn't the usual dog growl when they sense movement. This sound that came from him was low, deep, as if it came from a dark place, something he was trying to hold back but couldn't. I raised my head and looked in the direction he was staring. Nothing, absolutely nothing. An empty, dark corner that, in the dim light from the window, looked completely innocuous. But Max didn't move, and the growl continued. I tried to calm him, to call him, but he just ignored me, as if he were trapped by that shadow. Fear started growing in me, like an icy feeling down my spine that I couldn't ignore. The feeling that something was there, some presence, began to take hold of me, and although I couldn't see anything, I could almost feel a cold breath in the air. That night, I struggled to sleep. Max stayed on guard, his eyes glued to that same corner, and I felt as if something was watching us, analyzing our every move. The following nights weren't any different. The situation only got worse. Max began refusing to leave my room at night, and always at the exact same time. He would place himself between me and that empty corner, as if trying to protect me from something only he could see. His growls grew in intensity, and his fur stood completely on end, as if he were ready to attack. I began to lose sleep, afraid of what might be there. I started waking up drenched in sweat, with the feeling that someone was standing beside the bed, watching me. One night, exhausted from so much fear, I tried to confront it. I got out of bed, took a deep breath, and turned on the lights, looking for any logical explanation for Max's behavior. Maybe it was a shadow coming from the window, or some bizarre reflection that my tired mind was turning into something supernatural. But when I turned on the light, Max didn't stop. He kept growling, and this time his eyes were more focused than ever. It was as if he could clearly see what was there, and whatever it wasn't good. That night, as I tried to go back to sleep, I felt a strange chill in the air, as if the environment had grown heavier, dense, filled with an energy I couldn't understand. I closed my eyes, trying to ignore the fear, but it was then that everything got worse. I felt a weight on the mattress, as if someone had sat down beside me. The sensation was so real that I could swear that, if I reached out, I would touch something or someone. My body froze, and I couldn't open my eyes. Panic took over me, and my mind was screaming for me to get out of there. But fear paralyzed me. Max, who was on the floor, started howling, a sad, desperate sound that echoed in the room. He was in a total state of alert, staring fixedly at the bed, growling even more fiercely, yet he didn't approach. He seemed afraid. My own dog was scared, and that made me realize the gravity of the situation. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of pure terror, that feeling disappeared. The pressure on the mattress vanished, and the room fell silent again, except for Max's heavy breathing and my heartbeat pounding out of control. The next morning, I woke up with a heavy head, as if I hadn't slept at all. Max was in a state of exhaustion I had never seen before. He had stayed alert all night, keeping his eyes on me. I looked around the room, and everything seemed normal, but that fear continued to consume me inside. I felt that something was there, a presence that maybe only Max could see, but that somehow managed to manifest itself to me. Something that seemed to feed on my fear and knew the effect it had on us. In the following nights, Max began to position himself at the bedroom entrance, as if trying to prevent something from coming in. He stood there, motionless, and I could swear that, at times, I heard whispers, They were words I couldn't understand, but they seemed to be spoken in an angry, hate-filled tone. Max would growl in response, as if he were answering something, as if he were in an invisible battle that I couldn't see. And, although I didn't understand what was happening, I knew with absolute certainty that this presence didn't just want to scare us. It wanted something more. On the last night this happened, I woke up in the middle of the night to an unbearable cold. Max was in a frenzy, barking and growling at the corner of the room. This time, I decided to confront my fear and went over there. My hand trembled as I extended my arm, trying to touch that void. Suddenly, I felt a freezing chill, an energy so dense it felt like it was crushing me. My hair stood on end, and then I heard it. A voice, hoarse and distant, saying something I will never forget. "I will never leave you." At that moment, Max began barking like never before, as if he were desperate to pull me away from there. He grabbed me with his paw, dragging me away from that dark corner. I went into the hallway and took Max with me. He was panicking, and so was I. That voice continued to echo in my mind, as if it had rooted itself inside me. I spent the night awake, with the lights on, while Max stayed by my side, always vigilant. The next morning, I decided to leave the house for a while. I went to stay at a friend's place, and I took Max with me too, but every time I closed my eyes, I could feel that presence. I knew it was there somewhere, and that one day it would return. Since then, Max has never been the same, and neither have I. I inherited my grandfather's parrot after he passed away. I always found it odd that he had such a noisy pet because my grandfather was the kind of person who cherished silence. He used to say the bird was special, that it kept him company and kept him alert, but he never explained what he meant by that. The parrot was green, with piercing eyes that seemed to observe more than usual, and it had the strange habit of staying quiet for long periods, only to break the silence with sudden, sharp cries, almost as if it were calling someone. But things started to become truly bizarre when, one day, it mimicked my grandfather's voice with terrifying accuracy. The first time I heard my grandfather's voice coming from that small beak was in the middle of the night. I was sleeping when, suddenly, I woke up to a phrase he used to say, "Silence is our best friend. Don't forget that." It was exactly his tone, intonation, and the weight he put into those words. For a moment, I thought he was in the room, but I quickly realized the sound was coming from the living room, from the perch where the parrot was. I stood still, trying to convince myself it was just a coincidence, an involuntary repetition of a phrase it had heard before. But something inside me knew it was more than that. The next morning, I looked at the parrot with a mixture of curiosity and fear. It watched me closely, almost as if it knew what I was thinking. During the day, it behaved like any other parrot, but at night, always around 3 in the morning, it would begin to repeat phrases my grandfather used to say. They weren't random. They were specific things, spoken in specific moments, phrases tinged with a bitter nostalgia that dredged up painful memories. It was as if it were calling me, trying to make me remember something. It began to disturb me, but I tried to ignore it, thinking maybe it was just a form of repressed grief. Weeks passed, and the parrot became more persistent. It not only repeated my grandfather's phrases, but now also mimicked his laugh, a deep, drawn-out chuckle that I had always found peculiar. I started to feel a weight in the living room's air, as if that space had been invaded by an invisible presence. The atmosphere was heavy, dense, and every time I passed near the parrot, a chill ran down my spine. It watched me constantly, with its eyes fixed on me, as if it knew what I was feeling, and the sense that I wasn't alone never disappeared. One night, I went to the living room determined to confront the parrot, to speak to it as if it were truly my grandfather. I said out loud, "If you're here, why don't you show yourself? Why do you keep tormenting me like this?" The parrot went silent for a few moments, and I felt a shiver run through me. Suddenly, it tilted its head to the side, and then, in my grandfather's voice, said something I had never told anyone. "Time doesn't wait, and neither should we. That phrase was something my grandfather had told me once when I was just a child. It was a lesson he gave me in a specific moment, something that stayed between us, a secret of ours. There was no way the parrot could know that. It had never been present at that moment. The only possible explanation was that somehow this was my grandfather communicating with me through the animal. The idea was terrifying and, at the same time, impossible to ignore. From then on, I started listening to the parrot more carefully, as if it could tell me something, reveal some secret my grandfather hadn't had the time to share in life. But what began as curiosity quickly turned into something dark and sinister. The voices the parrot mimicked began to change. It was no longer just my grandfather's voice. It began to mimic my grandmother's voice, who had passed away many years before. She would call my name softly, almost lovingly, like she used to when I was little. The sound chilled me to the core because it was her voice, with all the nuances only I remembered. It felt like she was there, beside me, calling me to a place I didn't want to go. The things the parrot said became increasingly personal, more intimate, bringing up memories I preferred to forget. One early morning, I woke up with a suffocating feeling, as if someone were pressing down on my chest. My grandmother's voice echoed through the house, and the parrot was screaming endlessly, "We'll see each other soon. We'll see each other soon." The phrase repeated, echoing in every corner of the house, and the tone of the voice was no longer affectionate. It was a threat, a dark promise that made me feel like the ground was sinking beneath my feet. I ran to the living room and found the parrot in a frenzied state, rocking back and forth, with its eyes fixed on me, repeating those words without pause. Desperate, I began to shout, telling it to stop, but it didn't listen to me. It was as if it were possessed, as if that was the only thing it knew how to say. Then, in a movement of pure panic, I covered the cage with a sheet and tried to shut that sound out of my mind. I spent the rest of the night awake, with the lights on, unable to close my eyes, feeling that something terrible was about to happen. The next day, I decided I needed to get rid of the parrot. I went to the cage, still covered by the sheet, and hesitated for a moment before lifting the fabric. When I removed it, I found the parrot standing still with its eyes closed, as if it were dead. But suddenly, it opened its eyes, and in that gaze, I saw something I had never seen before. It wasn't the look of an animal. It was something human, something full of rancor, of a deep sadness that seemed to have been trapped there for a long time. And then, in a cold, distant voice, it whispered, "You can't get rid of me." Fear paralyzed me, and in that moment, I knew that no matter what I did, that presence would stay with me, wherever I went. I decided then to free it, opened the cage, and placed it outside the house, thinking that would end everything. But as I closed the door, I heard the sound of laughter, low and bitter, echoing through the room. A laugh that wasn't the parrot's, but that reminded me of someone. Since that day, even without it, I feel like I'm being watched. In the dead of night, I still hear voices whispering my name, and sometimes the distant cry of the parrot, echoing wherever I go. When I moved into the new apartment, I was looking to start over. I needed a quiet place to reorganize my life, and the location was perfect. The only thing that bothered me was the basement. It was at the back of the apartment, dark, cold, and filled with cobwebs. It seemed like it had been untouched for a long time, keeping secrets from previous tenants that I preferred not to know. But I had no idea what really awaited me down there. On the first day, while exploring the apartment, I heard a meow coming from the basement. It was a low, drawn-out sound, almost like a soft call, but at the same time slightly threatening. At first, I thought maybe a stray cat had wandered in. When I went down, I found a black cat sitting in the darkest corner of the basement, with bright yellow eyes that seemed to cut through the dimness, watching me with disturbing focus. It didn't seem scared or curious, just aware. It was as if it already knew who I was and somehow had been waiting for me. I tried to approach it, but the cat fled into a dark corner, vanishing into the shadows. I thought it was a lost animal, so I didn't pay much attention. But that very night, as I tried to sleep, I heard the sound of light footsteps, as if the cat were wandering through the apartment. I looked around, and in a moment of pure apprehension, I saw its eyes shining in the darkness of the hallway. It was there, motionless, watching me again. Those fixed eyes were almost hypnotic. But before I could react, it disappeared into the dark. In the following days, the cat continued to appear at unexpected moments. I would find it lying in the basement, watching me from the hallway, or even in front of my bedroom door. It never made a sound, except for a low, long meow that always seemed to resonate within me, like a dark vibration. Every time I tried to get close, it would disappear like a shadow, hiding in the darkness. And every night, the feeling that it was always nearby grew, as if the apartment were filled with its mysterious presence. One early morning, I woke up with a suffocating feeling, as if someone were watching me from very close. I opened my eyes and found it there, sitting calmly at the foot of my bed. Its eyes, two bright orbs in the dark, didn't look away from me. I was paralyzed, felt as if it were waiting for a reaction, some kind of sign. I tried to move, but my body seemed locked, as if that gaze had put me in a state of complete submission. After a few minutes, it stood up and, without haste, left the room, leaving a trail of icy silence. After that night, things got worse. I could no longer sleep properly, always feeling as if it were watching me. I would wake up multiple times, only to find the cat in some dark corner of the room or hallway, with those gleaming eyes fixed on me. Every time I tried to ignore it, the feeling of suffocation and dread increased, as if the very air around me were poisoned by its presence. I started to feel that the cat wasn't just an animal, but something much more sinister, a presence that seemed to feed on my fear. One night, desperate to understand what was happening, I decided to follow the cat into the basement. It stood by the hallway door, as if it wanted to guide me. I went down the stairs with a flashlight, and the cat disappeared into the shadows before I could reach it. The basement felt colder and damper than usual, with thick air, carrying a strange smell, almost like something rotting. The flashlight began to flicker, and I felt a chill that froze my blood. It was then that I heard the meow, this time louder, almost like a warning cry echoing through the empty space. When I turned around, the cat was there, sitting on top of an old box, its eyes fixed on me. I felt as if it wanted to show me something, as if there was a secret in that basement that I needed to uncover. Hesitantly, I began to look around and found a small opening in the wall, covered with old boards. I tried to remove one of the boards, and the smell of something decayed intensified, almost making me gag. I looked at the cat, and it just watched me with a supernatural calmness, as if it were waiting for my next move. With a mix of curiosity and horror, I removed the boards and found a small cavity in the wall, where something was hidden. It was an old wooden box, covered in dust, with scratch marks. Inside, I found an old journal and some faded photos of people I didn't recognize. The journal was filled with disturbing descriptions, talking about a man who had lived in that apartment and claimed to be haunted by a black cat. He described nights of torment, in which the cat would appear and watch him relentlessly until he felt trapped, suffocated, unable to escape that presence. As I read, the flashlight began to fail, and the cat let out a low, menacing meow that echoed in the basement like a threat. The journal spoke of the previous tenants' growing paranoia, who claimed the cat was not an ordinary animal but an entity, a dark presence that clung to people's souls, draining their vitality until nothing was left. He mentioned that the only way to get rid of the cat was to abandon the apartment, but until then, no one had managed to escape the influence of that creature. While I read, the flashlight went out entirely, plunging the basement into total darkness. I felt an icy chill run through my body, and when I looked to the side, I saw the cat's eyes glowing in the darkness, more intensely than ever. They seemed closer, as if it were silently approaching me. I tried to move, but it was as if an invisible force was holding me to the ground. forcing me to stay there, staring into those eyes that seemed to hold all the dark secrets of that place. At that moment, I felt a whisper in my ear, a hoarse, barely perceptible voice saying, "You shouldn't have touched that." A chill took over me, and in a final effort, I managed to move and ran out of the basement without looking back. I locked the door, but that feeling of being watched didn't disappear. That night, I heard the cat scratching at the basement door and meowing, a low, continuous sound that echoed throughout the apartment like a dark lullaby. Since then, it hasn't stopped appearing. Every night, I hear its footsteps in the hallway, feel its eyes on me, and that whisper returns to my ears, clearer each time, as if it were calling me back to the basement. I am trapped in a cycle of fear, where each day is worse than the last, and I don't know how much longer I can take it. I feel like the cat is waiting for me to give in, to surrender to its hypnotic gaze, so it can finally complete what it started. And deep down, I know that if I give in, I will never be able to leave this apartment again.